Hello. Continuing with the laws of Chanukah, we're in Tafresh Ayin Aleph, Dalid, 671-4. Mila kaira shemen vehekifa psilos. Let's say you have a bowl filled with oil, and you put wicks, just different floating wicks, in the oil. So im kaf aleh kli kol psila. If every wick is covered with its own separate vessel, so picture, you have a bunch of wicks floating around this pool of oil, and you cover each wick with like an inverted cup with a little hole for the wick to come out. So they're each separated by a separate vessel. Then each one counts as a separate candle that are separated by this top. Lo kafa lekli, if you don't cover it with a vessel, it doesn't count even for one candle because it's like a torch. So if you have a bunch of floating wicks, if they're not covered with anything, they're just, again, picture a pan of oil and just wicks floating around, that doesn't even count as one candle. The reason is because it looks like a torch, and one can't fulfill his obligation for Chanukah lights if it looks like that. However, if you cover each wick with a separate vessel, making it separate, then each one counts as a separate candle. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Ulachein, yesh lehizar lahamad haneris b'shura b'shava. Therefore, you should be careful when you set up the candles to make them in an equal line, velo bi'igul, and not in a circle. Dahavi kimadura, because that is like a torch. So if you have candles like in a circle, like this, maybe you think 8 candles in a circle, you shouldn't do that because you can't differentiate between each candle when you look at it, and it looks like a torch. So the optimal way to light the Chanukah candles is to have separate candles in a straight line. Umuter lahadlik bipmutos shekaron lampa. I guess they had something that was, it's lampa in German or whatever language the Rama spoke, or Yiddish. It was called a lampa, lamp. So there it sounds like it is in some sort of circle, either a semicircle or a circle. However, it's separated a lot. They're separate. Picture like one of those lamps with the candelabra where it's coming out on the sides, and you have each side different places for candles. So there, it's very, very far away. Shekol ner muvdal harbe mechavero. Each one is separated a lot. It's allowed. V'zaru kisheosim. Oh, so 1 second. So on that, we should just note that even though he says it's technically allowed, the Be'er Halacha says you still shouldn't do it. So we always have what's technically permitted, and then the optimum way. So the optimum way, even though this lampa thing is technically permitted, the Be'er Halacha says one should still not do that. The best way to do it is to have a straight line of candles. And the idea is that so that we can notice each candle being separate, and that it doesn't look like a big torch. Like, we don't want to see just like a big flame, and you can't tell what's going on. V'yizaru kishe'osim nerus afilu b'shayva she'ein l'davka b'yachad v'ladlikan dehavi kimadura. And he says, even when you're lighting Chanukah lights and you're using wax candles, until now he's been talking about oil, lighting oil. He says, if you use wax candles, then you should also be careful not to have the candles too close to each other, because that'll also look like a torch, right? You have the 2 candles like this, and then you have the flame. It looks like a torch. Even with the candles of Shabbos and the holidays, you should be careful not to do this. Okay, let's learn the Mishnah Berurah. Im kafa shayeze ein mischabrim kol psilos yachad v'dafka kishakafa v'achakach hidlik aval im hidlik v'achakach kafa tzarach lichpos lechasos bekli v'lachsor ulahadlik. He says, we mentioned that you're allowed to light candles when you have a puddle, like a pan of oil, and you have wicks, and the wicks are separated by other vessels on top of them to make them separate. And the Mishnah Berurah says that's only okay if before you lit they were separated. But if they were lit and then you separate them, then you place these other vessels on top of them to separate them, then that is a problem. We mentioned Lafishu Kamadura because it's like a torch. Shemischabros kol halahav yachad, because all the flames go together. B'shura b'shava. Hanu shalaasos echad nichnas v'echad yosi gam kein enu kedai shelo yavo lasos beigel. He also says it's not appropriate to have a line, but have one candle in and one candle out and go like that. That is not correct, because one might come and do the candles like a circle. Dehavi kimadura, v'yesh hefsek mechitza ben ner lener u'karachav etzba beinehem mutter v'afilu lo kaf alei kli v'chein nagim d'davka b'kaira she'in shum hefsek ben ner lener. So he says, another way you could do it is if you have this pool of oil and each wick is separated by this width and you have a little wall between each candle, that is also okay. In the case we mentioned of the candelabra, where you have the big, pieces of the candelabra coming out, and you have candles around it, that technically is okay, even though it's not preferred. The Mishnah Berurah says, "Mashma lashon zeh tatar tabin," and you need two things. Hainu she'agam kein muvdalim hakanim echad mechaver levad ma sheish lechol kana mechitz b'fnei atzmo. Says they have to be very separate, and they have to have separate pieces coming out for each candle. V'ayim be'ali rabba shekasut d'dai b'rachav etzba. The Ali Rabba writes, it's fine as long as they're apart the width of a finger, which this is that much. He says also, if you place wax candles in a wall, make sure the wax candles are separated by this much, at least this much. It's not so far. But so he's telling us how technically this case of the candelabra is okay, even though the candles aren't in a straight line, but nevertheless, one should not do it. One should have his menorah with the candles in a straight line. Even putting two candles together is a problem. Look in the Beralacha. Okay, so that concludes the halacha for today. And again, the idea is that one should ensure to have his candles or his Chanukah lights, they should be separate and they should be in a straight line. Have a great day.